And when you first started up the remake, what were your thoughts and feelings?
I welled up in my heart, Steve. I was so excited watching Cloud jump off that train and then getting to ice those fools, and then experiencing the train station so much more. Like in that first scene, I actually played like the first 3 hours of the game in or the first 3 hours of the original in preparation to do this podcast with you. And you jump off the train and you're right there at Shinra.
Right.
But in remake, you jump off the train and there's a train station to explore, and there's little nods and Easter eggs all over. So it was it was so much nostalgia and then so much satisfaction that it's difficult to put into words. I was exceptionally satisfied.
So when I first started playing the remake, I I live in a row home, so my neighbors probably knew that I was happy about something, because I was very loud. I actually like physically clapped because of how excited I was, and like each little beat that they did, that it's not an exact mirror of the original, because I've recently started playing it too. I played it last night. A lot of surprises there, but we'll get to that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was ecstatic to play the remake. And then I like how it like eases you into the new stuff. I mean, yes, they do extrapolate on that opening scene where you're running through the train station, but there's they they add in a lot more that makes it a better story and a better game.
Uh, I agree. There were definitely additions moving forward out of that first sequence, like the first sequence, getting a handle of the controls, learning elemental abilities against the first boss, and realizing that the fights are going to be a little bit more difficult than they would be in the original, was really nice. But then experience in the game moving forward was really refreshing. Um, I don't know if you want me to jump into sort of the next segment of likes and dislikes, or if you have anything else to
Oh
say.
no, no, please go ahead.
I think one of the big things for me that I realized within my first maybe like 3 hours of playthrough was how fleshed out characters were. In the original, characters like Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, they were just like the guy that opens the door, the girl that opens the door and gets her foot stuck, and then the fat guy. And in this game, there's so much more. Like they're dynamic characters. Jesse flirting with Cloud was like, do I want them to have a relationship? Is Cloud going to get him some? And then she exploring Jesse's home, sneaking through Jesse's home. Um, Backstory for Biggs uh, happening throughout the game. Learning more about Biggs when you get to Sector 5. Like, there's so much added to characters that were there and then lost, that you didn't really get any attempt to sort of feel anything for them. There was no emotional significance to the characters.
Right, which they I guess they wanted that in the original, because they certainly have the main characters, especially Barrett, be upset about their deaths. But this time, not only are like the characters upset, but you're upset as well. I believe you mentioned to me outside of this podcast that you were audibly upset when the the pillar fall section of the game was happening.
Yeah, when the plate fell and you watch the opening cutscenes and you see Biggs and Wedge and Jesse like struggling against the Shinra forces and all those robots. And as you climb the tower, you find Biggs and you have an emotional scene with him, and then he passes away, and then you have an emotional scene with Jessie, and then she passes away. And I forgot to mention that you do meet Biggs at the bottom of the tower, and he was able to get away safe. And you sort of see Wedge as this character that shuffled everybody along, and he helped save Sector 7. And that was another thing, that you saved Sector 7. You didn't save the place, but you saved the people.
Right.
Your story got split. You went up the tower as Cloud, and you went into the town as Aerith to save Marlene, but to ultimately aid people in escaping imminent doom, people that were definitely going to die. And that was a lot. Like, emotionally, that was a lot. Especially sort of going back to extrapolating how they expanded things. In the original Final Fantasy, there was the weapon guy, there was the item guy, and there was the materia guy, right? And you maybe talked to them once before you left Sector 7 for good. And in Remake, they added the like mercenary missions, basically the side quests. And they were a blast, and they made me care about Sector 7. I spent extra time there. I met the people. I met Chadley, even though I hate that little weird kid. But with spending, I'm going to say 2.5 to 3 hours in Sector 7 gives you a personal attachment to it. This was the place you started your game. So to see it go away was visceral. Really.
Oh yeah. The fact that you spend so much time in the sector and with the people makes you want to save it all the more. Despite fact, if you played the game before, you know you're not going to save it, but it's just makes you fight all the more harder.
Mm-hmm.